Hey, Grandma.
Hey, Elijah.
Happy birthday again. Wow, 73, huh?
Thank you, grandson. 73 is a ripe old age, I suppose. But tell me, how have your studies been?
They've been good, thanks. I'm learning quite a lot these days.
Oh, tell me about it, darling. What's your favorite class?
If I had to pick one, I'd say my critical theory class. It's so interesting and thought provoking, you know?
Critical theory? What's that now?
It's basically a class that teaches students the different cogs that make our society work. What's wrong with that, Grandma?
Well, university should be a place where you learn how to learn a career or a skill so that you can be able to have a good job and pay your mortgage and such. It's not a place to learn philosophy. That is a waste of money, in my opinion.
Well, Grandma, actually the things I learn in this class are incredibly useful. Not only am I learning important skills that will help me in everyday life, this class also teaches me how to be a better human.
How so?
Well, critical theory is a subject that I would define in layman's terms as analyzing the shit out of everything. Taking in the micro action and finding out the much bigger consequences and history behind it.
You really shouldn't use that language. I understand your point, but that's just trivia. A fun fact to tout at a party. How is this? You really shouldn't use that language. I understand your point, but that's just trivia. A fun fact to tout at a party. How is this actually useful?
Well, it's useful because it exposes not only the problems in our society, but the roots of the problem behind it. For example, do you know why you and Grandpa have always voted for Republicans?
Of course I know. They represent the Christian values that I grew up with, and they campaign for true freedom in this country.
Grandma, have you ever heard of Antonio Gramsci?
No? Who's he? Some fancy pants pasta maker?
No, Grandma. He was an Italian theorist who came up with the idea of hegemony and power.
So?
So, Gramsci said that cultural, moral, and intellectual leadership organize society in a way to keep the dominant group in power. And that can be in terms of class, race, or gender.
What's it to me, grandson?
Well, what if I told you that the real reason you vote for the Republicans is because you actually didn't have a choice? And that the very vote you cast has already been decided because those in power know that your adherence to republicanism is forced upon you from every aspect of your life. The hegemony, which is in your life through your church, your friends, the job you used to work at, virtually everywhere where you interact with people, it's influencing you in a way that only benefits the leadership.
And that's a load of horse shit. I vote for them because they have my best interest at heart and are good, decent people.
Well then, why is it that they won't pay for your pain medicine? Or why do they favor foreign investment over keeping local jobs? And when is the last time that you got a tax cut as large as the corporations who donate millions of dollars to the people in power's campaigns?
Well, I don't know about that. This is all too complicated for me anyways.
I know, it can be a lot sometimes. The world is quite gloomy when you look under the surface. Speaking of gloom, I can't believe Uncle Harold is still alive.
Me too. That man's been all bones and spite since Janet left him.
Poor Uncle Harold.
Enough about him. I still don't understand your criticized theory.
Critical theory, Grandma, critical theory. Well, another reason why this class is so important to me is that it teaches about my privilege, and how to recognize ways in which I have internal bias and how to correct myself. It helps me appreciate the value of experience over education. For example, these two researchers, Oslam Sensoy and Robin DiAngelo, wrote a book called Is Everyone Really Equal? And in it they explain that from a critical social justice framework, informed knowledge does not refer exclusively to academic scholarship, but it also includes the lived experiences and perspectives that marginalized groups bear to bear on an issue, due to their insider standing.
Okay, first of all, everyone is equal. We all live under the same laws, no? And second, what does this have to do with getting a job?
First of all, Grandma, no. Everyone is not equal, period. Many people in marginalized communities do not have access realistically to the same rights you and I do. And for the job, it might not help me in a specific career, but what it has taught me is an enormous sensibility to the experiences of others, and to the fact that I have mannerisms that I need to change. It keeps me humble, and like I said, it makes me a better human. Specifically though, what it means is that I might be at a job, and let's say I've studied for 10 years the subject of class inequality. Well, despite all those 10 years, I still will not have nearly as much experience or knowledge as someone who's lived under the poverty line. So if that person would be a part of my team, then I would value to a much higher degree their contribution on that particular subject.
I see. I think I understand a little better now, but hold on. You're talking to me about race 1 minute, religion the next, class now. What exactly are you studying then?
All that and more. I'm not delving deep into any one of the specific subjects, like chapters from the Bible or the first union in factories. I learn more about what currents in society create religion, or the need for unions. It also just makes me look at society in a much more contrasted way than the way dominant culture shows it. That's the songs you hear on the radio, the movies you see at the cinema. And specifically, they perpetuate capitalism in all aspects of our lives.
Oh dear Lord, they've brainwashed you into a Marxist, haven't they?
No, Grandma. I was simply shown how deeply flawed our society is. Think of it. For example, why did Grandpapa wake up every day to go to the GM plant and work from sun up to sundown for the smallest of pays?
Well, so we could get paid. So we could live.
Yes, but was it living so much as it was surviving?
Well, of course times are hard, Elijah, but my dad earned a decent wage and respected authority, and with that earned the respect of his foreman and our community.
I would argue, Grandma, in the spirit of these French guys, Deleuze and Foucault, that in reality, Grandpa was only paid the absolute minimum by the company, just enough to live. Like slavery, forcing him to work forever for this company. And you want to talk about respect for authority? That same authority that respected him so highly, remember what they gave him after 25 years of hard work? A pen. They gave him a pen and a $50 bonus on his next check. And the respect he gave back to them, I mean, who taught him to even respect authority?
His parents, that's who. And I'm surprised your parents haven't taught you the same, young man.
So you mean authority itself? His parents first taught him to respect authority in the family, then school taught him to respect the authority of society, and then it was the company. Without ever putting in an original thought, he chose company loyalty blindly over his own good. And all he did after that was perpetuate the system to you, and you to Dad, and then Dad to me.
Well, now, that isn't completely true. Dad helped to start the first union in Oklahoma.
Well, then of course, it's undeniable that he managed to break part of the chain of the status quo. But General Motors only allowed the union because in their minds, they would make a better profit having a union versus the loss of money that came with the disruption. So they didn't even do it out of human decency. They did it because of money and capitalism. In the end, as Deleuze puts it, the factory was a body that contained its internal forces at a level of equilibrium, the highest possible in terms of production, the lowest possible in terms of wages.
Jeez, well, when you put it like that.
Yep, pretty gloomy.
Now, while I do agree that what GM did was despicable, what is so wrong with respecting authority?
Well, it's wrong because people respect authority out of fear, not out of merit. Michel Foucault, Mom loves him by the way, was a guy who wrote about power and authority a lot. And a lot of his work revolved around the idea that we conduct ourselves in society in a good fashion because we are afraid not only of the punishment if we stray, but we're also afraid of that we're being watched without being exactly certain about it. For example, you ever heard of the Panopticon prison? Well, the Panopticon prison is basically there's this one guard tower in the middle with tinted windows, encircled by the prison cells. That means that one guard could effectively watch the entire block. And since the prisoners can't tell which way the guard is watching, they don't escape out of fear that the guard is watching them. Foucault says that most of society works in this way. You work as hard as you can at the factory, not because you wish to do so, but because you're afraid of your boss catching you lacking. You work hard in school, not because you want to do so, but because you're afraid of the punishment your teachers and your parents will give you if you slack. You don't speed because you care about going 30 miles per hour in a school zone on a Saturday afternoon. You don't do it because you're afraid of getting a ticket.
I understand that aspect, but surely the people in power know what they're doing, right?
Well, what's wrong with that thought is that it perpetuates all of the problems to the ends of time. If you've been taught since birth to obey authority, and authority tells you to study hard to get into a good school in order to get a good job, and then this authority tells you to like certain things and adhere to certain moral values, and in the end, a lot of the people in this country don't even think for themselves. Because if you stray so much as a little from the dominant culture, you are punished. And that's what it's all about in the end. You either bow down to society's demands, or you go to prison. You get fired. You don't get approved from a bank loan. You get excommunicated from your community. You know, the society of discipline is so real. So, you know, there's some hegemony for you.
Wow. I'm learning so much heavy stuff tonight. I had no idea.
I know, Grandma. It's pretty crazy stuff.
So, where do we go from here? What's the use of all this knowledge if you can't do anything about it?
Imagine, Grandma, if everybody had this knowledge. Imagine if people were taught how to critically think about how society works, how capitalism works, how power works. It would change our life. If we all collectively lift up those that are part of marginalized communities and fight against power, then I think there would be a lot of good change that would benefit the many and not the few. That's what critical theory has taught me.
There you go again with that Marxist stuff. You're my favorite little communist, my dear.
Well, we can talk about Marx another time. I will gladly have an entire conversation with you about him.
Yes, maybe sometime down the road. I have to digest all this stuff first. Thank you for sitting down and taking the time to talk to an old woman who's stuck in her ways. I truly appreciate it, Elijah.
You're welcome, Grandma. I love you. Let's get back to the others.